When Tom Cruise mocked Caroline Leavitt and her husband at the Hollywood Heroes Gala, he had no idea the storm he was about to unleash. But by the time he realized his mistake, it was already too late. The cameras flashed, the crowd laughed, and in that moment, Tom Cruise made the biggest miscalculation of his career. He underestimated Caroline Leavitt. The Hollywood Heroes Gala had always been nothing more than a carefully orchestrated illusion, a glittering masquerade where the rich and famous gathered to pretend they cared about anything beyond their own fame and fortune. The red carpet that evening was a dazzling spectacle of flashing cameras and blinding lights, with A-list celebrities striking practiced poses while their publicists hovered nearby, whispering last-minute reminders about which causes to mention in interviews. Inside the lavish ballroom, the air was thick with the cloying scent of expensive perfume and the metallic tang of champagne flutes being refilled by silent waitstaff. It was the same tired routine year after year, superficial conversations about philanthropy masking the desperate hunger for attention, the quiet calculations of who was rising and who was fading in Hollywood's cruel hierarchy. But this year would be different. This year, the carefully constructed fantasy was about to be shattered by a woman who refused to play by Hollywood's unwritten rules. Caroline Leavitt's entrance into the gala sent immediate ripples through the crowd that even the most jaded observers couldn't ignore. At just 27 years old, she carried herself with the quiet authority of someone twice her age, her posture straight but not stiff, her gaze sharp but not aggressive. The emerald green gown she wore wasn't just expensive fabric, it was armor, clinging to her curves in a way that was both elegant and formidable, the color so deep it seemed to absorb the light around her. The silver cross at her throat caught, the light with every movement, a silent declaration of the faith that had sustained her through the cutthroat world of Washington politics. Beside her, Nicholas Richio moved with the easy confidence of a man who had earned his place in the world through sheer determination rather than inherited privilege. His broad shoulders filled out his tailored tuxedo perfectly, but it was his eyes, cool gray and utterly unimpressed by the spectacle around them, that truly set him apart. This wasn't a man who needed Hollywood's approval, and that simple fact made him dangerous in a room full of people whose entire existence depended on being liked. Tom Cruise, the evening's host, and a man whose legendary status in Hollywood had long since calcified into something resembling a museum exhibit rather than a living career, took the stage with the same practiced charm that had served him for decades. His smile was still dazzling, his hair still perfect, but there was something almost desperate in the way he gripped the microphone, as if he could physically will the audience to remember why he was still relevant. His opening jokes landed with the precision of a seasoned performer, gentle jabs at politicians that drew knowing chuckles, playful teasing of fellow actors that got just the right amount of laughter. Then his gaze fell on Caroline and Nicholas, sitting at their table, and something predatory flashed in his eyes. Here, he clearly thought, were easy targets. A political aide and her businessman husband, outsiders who wouldn't know how to fight back in this world of carefully coded insults and backhanded compliments. Let's give a big Hollywood welcome to Caroline Leavitt, the White House's very own firecracker, Cruise purred into the microphone, his voice dripping with condescension. The camera zoomed in on Caroline's face as he continued. And her husband, what was it again? Oh yes, a real estate developer from New Hampshire. The pause was just a beat too long. Just enough to make the description sound like a punchline waiting to happen. The audience tittered nervously, sensing blood in the water. Cruise, emboldened, went in for the kill. You know, when I first saw them walk in, I actually thought he was her bodyguard, he smirked, pausing for effect before delivering the final blow. Turns out she married him. Must have been love at first penthouse deposit. The room exploded in laughter, some genuine, most performative, all of it designed to reinforce the hierarchy that said Hollywood royalty could mock outsiders with impunity. But then, something extraordinary happened that would be analyzed frame by frame on social media for weeks to come. The camera caught the exact moment Caroline's expression shifted, Not into anger or embarrassment, but into something far more dangerous. Cold, calculating, determination. She didn't glance around to see who was laughing. She didn't force a smile to play along. Instead, she turned slowly to Nicholas, her lips barely moving as she spoke words that the microphones didn't catch, but that would later become legendary. He just made the biggest mistake of his career. Nicholas didn't respond verbally, but the way his jaw clenched and his fingers tightened around his water glass spoke volumes. This wasn't just some celebrity being rude. This was a declaration of war, and both of them knew exactly how to fight back. What happened next would go down in Hollywood history as one of the most electrifying moments ever captured at an awards show. Caroline rose from her seat with the deliberate grace of a predator stalking its prey, her emerald gown flowing behind her like a banner of war. The murmurs in the room died instantly as every head turned to watch her progress toward the stage. Waiters froze mid-pour. Publicists clutched their clients' arms in sudden panic. Even the camera operators, trained to remain detached, couldn't resist zooming in on the unfolding drama. Tom Cruise, mid-sentence in another joke, actually stuttered as he noticed her approach, his famous smile flickering like a faulty neon sign. For the first time in his decades-long career, he wasn't in control of the room anymore. When Caroline took the microphone from a stunned stagehand, the silence was so complete you could hear the rustle of fabric as hundreds of people leaned forward. Simultaneously, she didn't adjust the mic or clear her throat. She simply began speaking in a voice that carried to every corner of the room without needing to be raised. Tom seems to think he can turn me and my husband into his opening monologue. Material, she said, her tone deceptively calm. But I'm not here to be his punchline. I'm here for the people like Nicholas, men and women who build real lives through real work, not by memorizing lines or pretending to be someone else for a living. The emphasis on the word pretending was subtle, but devastating. A surgical strike at the very foundation of Cruise's identity. The reaction was instantaneous and seismic. Veterans in the audience, men and women who had served their country with quiet dignity, were the first to rise to their feet in applause. Their standing ovations spread like wildfire through the ballroom as more and more guests found the courage to show their support. Camera flashes exploded like fireworks as reporters realized they were witnessing something far more significant than the usual staged awards show drama. Tom Cruise stood frozen at the podium, his face a mask of shock that even his legendary acting skills couldn't conceal. In that moment, everyone in the room understood the same terrible truth. The king of Hollywood had just been dethroned, and he'd done it to himself. But this was merely the opening salvo in what would become the most brutal takedown Hollywood had ever witnessed. Because Caroline Leavitt didn't just have confidence and quick wit. She had something far more dangerous, irrefutable proof of Cruise's hypocrisy. Buried in her files was a collection of documents cryptically labeled Gibson 19, emails, internal memos, and damning evidence that Tom Cruise had personally cancelled his appearance at a veterans charity gala years earlier because his PR team deemed the organization too conservative for his image. She had kept this information private, never intending to use it unless absolutely necessary. But now? Now the gloves were well and truly off. When Cruise's high-powered legal team responded with a blistering cease and desist letter threatening a multi-million-dollar defamation lawsuit unless Caroline issued a public apology, they clearly expected her to fold like so many others had before her. Instead, she went nuclear. A primetime interview on Fox News. A meticulously researched Twitter thread that went viral within minutes. The full release of the Gibson 19 documents to every major news outlet. Within hours, the story had metastasized far beyond Hollywood gossip into a full-blown cultural reckoning about celebrity hypocrisy and the true meaning of honor. The fallout was swift and merciless. Keanu Reeves, arguably the only actor in Hollywood, with more public goodwill than Cruise had enjoyed, tweeted simply, "Honor isn't something you perform, it's something you live." Veterans organizations across the country began sharing stories of being used as photo ops by celebrities who then disappeared when real support was needed. Major brands quietly pulled their endorsement deals with crews. Studio executives, sensing the shifting winds, began reconsidering his involvement in upcoming projects. The man who had ruled Hollywood for nearly 4 decades found himself suddenly, shockingly alone, and all because he'd underestimated a young woman who refused to play by the old rules. By the time Caroline took the stage at the Veterans Honor Summit 2 weeks later, the transformation was complete. Dressed not in an evening gown but in a sharp navy suit, she delivered a speech so powerful that hardened combat veterans were seen wiping away tears. "Some people think honor is something you put on with your tuxedo or your designer gown," she said, her voice steady and strong. "But the men and women in this room know the truth. Honor is what remains when the cameras are off, when no one's watching, when the only reward is knowing you did the right thing." The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes, a thunderous roar of approval that echoed far beyond the walls of the convention center. In the end, this wasn't just about a feud between a White House press secretary and a movie star. It was about something much bigger, a fundamental shift in who gets to define what matters in our culture. Caroline and Nicholas didn't just win their battle with Tom Cruise. They exposed the hollow core of celebrity culture itself, proving that real power doesn't come from box office numbers or Instagram followers, but from the courage to stand by your convictions when it matters most. Now we want to hear from you. If you were in that ballroom watching Tom Cruise mock Caroline and Nicholas, would you have had the courage to stand up and applaud when she took the microphone? Or would you have stayed silent, afraid of rocking the boat? Drop your honest answer in the comments below. And if you believe the world needs more people like Caroline who aren't afraid to speak truth to power, hit that subscribe button for more stories about the underdogs who change the game.